there's no place like home for the holidays. And no matter how far away you roam, if you pine for the sunshine of a friendly gaze, for the holidays you can.
Welcome back to Horror for the Holidays, a Christmas horror movie podcast. I'm Jay Logsden.
And I'm Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
And, Jeff, I'm sure you know. I mean, we've talked about it. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to the podcast.
Happy birthday to this damn podcast.
We made it a year. I mean, we've had very little success in this year.
We've
but
had ups and we've had downs and then some more downs.
We've had a lot of downs. But it's, it's been fun, and it's, certainly I think, this is a good way for you and me to keep in touch. Like, we've left a lot of jobs and it's hard to keep in touch with people. And this has been a fun way for you and I to kind of maintain our friendship and have a way to see each other. So
agreed.
And in the meantime, we've gotten to watch movies of varying quality.
Wildly varying quality.
So I think I hinted on the last episode about 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it'd be about 2.5 now, I think.
We'd kind of had this idea for this podcast, and we'd been messing around with it, and Jeff went and bought all the equipment, and we were supposed to, we had a job, and our end date was supposed to be like October of 2021. Mm-hmm. And so we were all planning to be done, we had all kind of, everything was running down. And then they kind of pulled the rug out from underneath us and sent everybody back to work.
Everybody's back.
And so it kind of, we were getting ready. We had literally had a schedule made up for like, all right, we will record on this day and this day, and, and we'll start getting this podcast put out. And we even recorded the first episode.
Yep.
And then I think the next day we got like the email, or we got the communication, like everybody's coming back. We completely screwed up shutting down this department.
Oops.
And so they brought everybody back, and people dropped off over time, and I left. My mom was real sick with cancer, and so I left to go take care of her, and just kind of needed a change of scenery, and so we're here. We are now. It took about 1.5 years for us to kind of get everything set up again and kind of figure out a schedule, and so that's why. We're now at a year anniversary instead of 2 years or whatever. But for our first episode, we recorded, we did 2015's A Christmas Horror Story. We watched the movie. We recorded the whole thing. We had some slightly different segments than we do now.
Slightly.
But that was kind of our thing, and we've still got it saved somewhere on here.
It was the greatest episode of all time, and you'll never hear it.
Maybe at some point we'll release it as kind of a bonus.
Yeah, we could release it as a bonus or something.
I'll have to edit it quite a bit, but
nah, just release it as is.
But yeah, so we're as kind of as we said on the last episode, it's kind of a tribute to that very first episode. We've made it a year. We've done this for a year now. We're going back and we're doing 2015's A Christmas Horror Story.
Finally.
So
good movie.
Let's deck the halls. First thing I have, this is an anthology. It was released October 2nd of 2015. Not quite in the sweet spot that you and I kind of talk about, that late, that like November to December kind of sweet spot, but a little early, but not too bad.
Yeah, pretty close.
Director Grant, there's multiple directors. It's an anthology, but Grant Harvey has been heavily involved with the Ginger Snaps franchise, which is kind of why the movie takes place in Bailey Downs. It's the same for Stephen Hoban, Brett Sullivan, all kind of the same thing. They were all involved in Ginger Snaps, but Stephen Hoban was also a producer on the 2006 Black Christmas remake. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Interesting tie-in.
Writers, we've got James Key, Sarah Larson, Doug Taylor, Pascal Trottier, and Jason Philitrout, uncredited, who have, all have other credits to their names. And, not to tip our hat too much. But, I know, we certainly stand with the writers and the actors at this moment. But
Not me. Bring in the scabs.
but while they're it may be in between protesting and picketing, they could start working on a sequel to this, because this movie's a lot of fun.
They're delaying season 4 of The Mandalorian. This is unacceptable.
Biggest star, we got some guy named William Shatner,
I don't know.
who
Never heard of him.
who plays a local radio DJ, Dangerous Dan.
Yes. Awesome name for a DJ, by the way.
Probably second biggest star, George Buza, who plays Santa / Storm and Norman. He's done a lot of voice work and stuff like that, but probably the biggest one, certainly for Jeff and I, because we're big giant nerds, is he was the voice of Beast, Hank McCoy, on X-Men the Animated Series.
Yep. Definitely the biggest for us then.
And then I think X-Men 94, is that what they're calling the new series that's going to come out, the new animated series?
Yeah, I think that is.
And I think he's certainly reprising his role. Rob Archer, who plays Krampus in this movie, is 6'7", 285 pounds of pure muscle.
Yes.
And my understanding, they did this for Joe Bob's Ghoul-Tide Get Together last year.
Yep.
They had him act in most of the scenes like as Krampus in the middle of winter in like Canada. And like the dude's not wearing a shirt. And like that alone is pretty impressive.
Must be made of sterner stuff than me.
Also, like, I thought it was one of those things where like the first time I was like, this guy had to be like a pro wrestler or something. No, like I couldn't find anything about that, but I was like, oh, that would have been really like, dude's just like jacked to all get out. AC Peterson, who plays Big Earl, also appears in the short The Last Christmas as Santa. It's a short film, but we might have to find a way to watch some short films for the show or something.
If you live in Des Moines, that name is funny.
It is very funny. Corinne Conley, who plays Aunt Etta, was the voice of Doll on the Rankin Bass Rudolph,
Interesting.
which I thought was also kind of a cool connection.
Interesting Christmas connection.
Julian Richlings, Gerhardt, the creepy groundskeeper,
The gowns have to be kept.
was Death in Supernatural,
Sweet.
and is also the creepy janitor in Urban Legend. And then also appears in a different Christmas horror short called like Old Timers. So once again, we should try to figure out a way to.
We're gonna have to do like a shorts episode or something.
And
maybe.
we backed that movie Present on YouTube, and so like just find a chunk of those and watch them all. That'd be fun.
Maybe a short series.
Demir Andre, who plays Principal Herod, was in Happy Birthday to Me as Junior Sturgeon, and is also in the William Shatner movie Visiting Hours, which is also a horror movie.
Okay.
So not the first time he's been in a movie with William Shatner, although I don't think they ever interact in this movie.
I don't know if he would remember it being how drunk he was.
And then, as we mentioned on our Letters to Satan Claus episode, Jessica Clement, who plays Grace in this movie, was motherfucking Faith Pringle.
Bwah, 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 bwah.
Oh man, loved Letters to Satan Claus. What a movie that was.
It was interesting, all right.
This whole the whole cast has pretty consistently gotten work over like the last 20 years or so.
I mean, you can tell no one really has comes off as bad.
It was like, as I was kind of like looking through doing research, I was like, oh man, like every single person, you think of a show and like someone in this movie has been involved with one of the, there was even like one of the guys I think has been in like all the Conjuring movies.
Yeah, I do remember reading that.
And I think like another guy was like what I think was the love interest in Wednesday, the Netflix series.
Oh yeah.
But you've got people who like appear in Supernatural. You got people who appear in like, I want to say like Scorpion or whatever, like just like all sorts of the Blacklist, like all sorts of different things. I thought that was just kind of neat. Like all these people like pretty consistently get work.
Yeah, I mean they all deserve it. They're all good.
This is currently streaming on Tubi, also on Shudder, as we mentioned for Joe Bob's Ghoul-Tide Get Together last year.
Always fun to watch something with Joe Bob.
We have a DVD copy, but there's lots of ways to watch this, and I mean, Joe Bob does a better job of doing what we do.
Yeah,
so
pretty
I mean,
much.
if you're bored with this, just go watch that instead.
We're the poor man's Joe Bob.
Yeah. Couldn't really find a budget for this movie.
No, I didn't really. I saw a few estimates that were between like 2 and 5 million, which I mean, honestly, was pretty good effects wise, and none of the sets or anything really seemed cheap. So I'd say whatever budget they had, whether it was on the low end or the higher end, they made good use of it.
It's a pretty tight, like 99-minute movie. Like,
Which I mean is impressive considering that it's really got 4 stories to go through.
and then just kind of something that I noticed watching the extras. One of the directors said they wanted to make a Christmas movie for edgy teens, and I'd argue that they probably succeeded. I think if we were younger, like this would be one of those movies where it's like, oh yeah, this movie's great. Like,
Have you seen that movie, bro? It's pretty cool.
yeah. I mean, I think I said to my wife, the movie Christmas Bloody Christmas, it's gotten some mixed reviews, and but I really liked it, and I said to my wife at one point, I was like, a lot of people kind of hate on the movie, and I'm like, but I liked it quite a bit, and I think like if I were 18, 19, 20 when it came out, it would be like my favorite movie ever.
Yeah, that reminds me of what I said to my wife the other day. What do you want for dinner?
But yeah, I mean, experience with this movie, I'd seen it, I think right about the time it came out, 2015, 2016. Watched it one night on like Christmas. I think the story is that my wife and I had put on Wind Chill, hated it, went to bed, woke up, and then like, I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna like that didn't sit right with me, and so I went out and like found this and watched it instead and had a blast.
I can't let this stand.
And but yeah, and then watched it with Jeff. Watched it for Joe Bob last year. Then we watched it again. So I think I've seen this about 5-6 times.
I was late to the party. I didn't watch it till we watched it together that first time. But I mean, as honestly, I would say probably my favorite out of everything we've watched so far. But that would be getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, we'll get there in time. Anything else you found interesting to talk about?
No, you pretty much covered everything I could find. It's kind of weird for a movie that seems like it had to have been like a fairly, well done production. There's really not a whole lot of information about the making of the movie or, like we said, the budget or anything like that. Honestly, I couldn't even really find much about the soundtrack or anything, even though it has a really interesting soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's some lost special features out there somewhere that they could release on like a new remastered 4K release or something.
No, that would be really cool. Yeah, the Alex Kaplan, I think, is the guy or whatever.
Cashkin, something
yeah,
like
did
that.
did the
soundtrack.
did the soundtrack, and yeah, it's a fantastic soundtrack.
And I mean, whoever did the special effects too, they deserve honestly, some of the special effects are like, I'd say better than some of the big budget special effects I've seen. Especially like the detail on like the Krampus suit.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's one of the better ones I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess one last thing before we get into it. No elves were harmed in the making of this picture.
Ah, that's disappointing. Damn elves.
All right, we'll get our synopsis going here. There's a popular TikTok sound that is it's Christmas Eve, all who believe that, like that kind of thing. It's a very popular TikTok Christmas horror sound, and that's the music that plays at the beginning of the movie over opening credits as we watch a bunch of like snowflakes kind of form and fall, and I think like kind of get covered in blood and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it does a really nice job of setting the tone at the beginning.
We then cut to like the outside of this big like winter fortress. And where it kind of like zooms around the outside and then goes in through like a stable door, and we see Santa walking through. He's kind of battered and bloodied. He's carrying like a staff. There's blood dripping off the staff, and he like talks to Comet, his reindeer, and he is like, we're gonna try and get out this year, old friend. I know it's been tough, but we're gonna try.
Storms never stopped us yet.
And then there's a banging starts on like the stable door. And Santa kind of looks at his pocket watch and he's like, "It's time," as the begging kind of gets louder and it increases in intensity. And then like a bright light, the doors burst open and a bright light kind of shines through, and then it says 12 hours earlier. And
Classic.
we're outside of the town, or we're getting like an aerial shot of the town of Bailey Downs as local DJ Dangerous Dan talks about how it's Christmas in Bailey Downs and he's going to be on the radio with us for the next 12 hours.
And this is the most sober he's ever going to be.
As I think we're literally watching him like dump eggnog, like rum into eggnog.
This is before he gives up on the pretense of the nog.
And then he's like, and we got our weatherman Storm and Norman heading down to the mall for Christmas. And he's gonna see all the good little boys and girls. Why don't you say something, Norman? And then there's just a loud thud as he puts "fuck Christmas" on a notepad
Paper and
and just slams it on the thing and walks away. And and I think Shatner says something like, "Oh, that's not very nice, Norman," or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, Norman.
And so William Shatner, Dangerous Dan is kind of our framing device for the movie. We will continuously get scenes of like Shatner talking about stuff, and we'll kind of come back to him at the end as he kind of frames around the movie.
He keeps mentioning disturbances at the local mall and for people to stay away.
And so we're kind of the movie likes to do a thing where it kind of tells the stories at the same time. And kind of weaves them together and kind of to form a narrative. But that's kind of hard to do, like to keep track of each story individually. So instead we're going to kind of tackle one at a time. And then we'll kind of come back and like I said, at the end, we'll talk about the thing that Dangerous Dan has been talking about.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with we're outside of a school that used to be a convent, and we're introduced to Dylan, Ben, and Molly. They've decided to break into the school because like a year ago,
2 murders.
Yeah, there were 2 murders. The killer is still at large. 2 of the members of the student body went missing. And there's this girl Caprice who like is the boyfriend of
It's our friend Chevy Caprice.
I think Dylan. It's Dylan's girlfriend. Caprice is like, yeah, I was able to steal, like I think she's like stickiest fingers in school, and she was able to like steal the keys to get in the
Gross
school after hours. That is kind of gross. And so they're kind of filming this thing, and I think the implication is like they're filming this, not only to tell this story, but also because some of the 2 boys are kind of failing media studies or whatever, and so they're trying to kind of get extra credit.
And either one or both of them seems like they really want to sleep with Molly.
Right. Certainly, I think Ben does.
Yes.
But yeah, like Dylan, like Dylan is, Dylan's dating Caprice. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
It's something.
And so they're filming inside the school, talking about what happened all those years, or last year. And then they're like, oh, I'm picking up something on the microphones. And they run, and they're like, oh, it's Principal Herod. Yeah. And they run into the basement, and they're able to open the basement door and get in. And from behind, Principal Herod looks a lot like Henry Winkler.
Yes, very close.
I think I've watched, like I said, I think I've watched this movie 5 or 6 times, and just about every time I go, shit, I didn't know the Fonz was in this movie. And then every time I'm like, oh, it's not the Fonz, it's just the Fonz from behind.
I'm always disappointed.
Every goddamn time I'm like, oh shit, it's the Fonz. So they sneak down into the basement, and then but now they're unable to get out. Like they think Principal Herod locked them in. I think they're even kind of convinced that Principal Herod might be their murderer. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of exploring, and it turns out because it used to be a convent, and I think it was like a home for wayward girls. Yes. There's lots of like beds and stuff down there, and even I think there's heavy implication that like they performed abortion. Oh, I don't think it's implied. I think they flat out say it. They performed abortions down there and stuff like that.
Basically, the old school solution for unwed mothers.
And so like they're all kind of down there trying to stay warm, trying to get out, trying to celebrate Christmas, all sorts of stuff. They're trapped.
They're doing their hot young teen things.
And at one point, like Dylan sneaks off to go use the bathroom. maybe to kind of go investigate.
No, he's investigating something.
And like there's this, like Molly kind of has like a seizure or something, and when she kind of comes to, she's acting very different, and she goes up and she kind of talks to Dylan, and she kind of, she's trying to hit on him, she's trying to come onto him, and he's like, I'm with Caprice, and he gets killed.
Yep.
Is that the I think is that the one where like he gets pinned to the wall, or is that later?
I believe that's later.
Okay, that's Ben.
Yeah, that's Ben.
And so then Ben kind of wakes up, and Molly's coming on to him now instead, and they have
and he's like, sweet.
Yeah, he's kind of excited. I think earlier on, I think at one point, like Ben says, like Dylan says something to Top Ben, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're a virgin," like the classic insult that people like to use. And so then,
realistically, he only lasts about 30 seconds.
Yep, and Dylan and Molly have clumsy through the zipper sex on a chair. And then, like, instantly, like, Molly kind of stands up, hikes, like pulls down her skirt, and then, like, her demeanor changes. And
what did you do to me?
Yeah, what did you do to me? And he's like, what did I do to you? What did you do to me?
More like, what did you do to me? And can we do it again?
And so, like, we kind of know that, Molly was
possessed by the ghost.
Yep. And I think earlier on, maybe there's a thing about, like, they heard a sound, like they heard like a song singing.
They can hear a woman talking at several points, and they can hear a baby crying at certain points too.
And so, I think it's kind of and then we get this story about how there was essentially an immaculate conception. A girl showed up at the convent claiming that, she was a virgin, but she was pregnant, and, and they forced her to like abort the baby, and in the process, I think killed her.
Yeah, her name was Grace.
And and that's Faith Pringle from our favorite Letters to Satan Claus. And so they're kind of walking through, they're not really talking to each other. They're very weirded out about what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they walk into a room and they see like these nuns, and there's like a girl screaming, and then the door slams shut, like these ghostly nuns.
Yeah.
And they like walk into a room, and Molly says something about like, she wanted her baby to be born into the world. Like you put her baby into me. Mm. And Ben's like, you're crazy or whatever. And then like the ghost appears and it is going to attack Molly, realizes that she's pregnant, and then turns to Ben, who's like freaking out.
So Ben grabs something up. I can't remember what, but he threatens the ghost, and the ghost is like, well, then you're dead.
Yeah. And so, like force pulls him up and pins him to the wall, and he, kind of crucifies him on the wall.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And so that, it's the same thing. Essentially what happened last year was, I think these people, these two high schoolers didn't have sex.
They must have refused to get pregnant.
And so she killed both of them. But now that Molly is pregnant, she's free to go. And we just watched the door open up as Molly walks out from the basement singing the same song that the ghost was singing.
It's like she's found a new host, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which I was kind of curious. I wonder if she would have killed Ben if he hadn't threatened. Because I think the ghost was seeing him raising his hand or whatever as he was going to hit Molly.
Right.
And so I wonder if she was protecting the baby.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it was.
He might have been able to live. He could have got laid and lived as a virgin in a horror movie. You know how rare that is.
Right. So then we which one do you want to do next? Probably just cut to the Changeling story.
Yeah, so we might as well go on because he's connected to this the strongest.
So there's a scene where like they're watching the old police footage from last year, and there's this police officer,
Officer Scott Peters.
Yep, and he is he was kind of investigating that, and he's been on leave ever since he kind of discovered these bodies, and he's been investigating it.
Well, and he does the same thing that they did when they first entered the asylum area or whatever they want to call that in the basement. He's like, do you hear that, to his partner? And his partner's like, no. And
then we get like a jump scare of the body falling out of the ceiling or whatever.
So obviously he was able to hear the song as well.
And so he and his wife and son are going to get a Christmas tree. They sneak on, and like the wife's kind of against this whole idea. She's like, we're breaking onto someone's property, and he's like, baby, I'm a cop.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's essentially, I think, kind of his
Freeze,
attitude.
buddy. I'm a cop.
And so they go onto this, and they've got the son, and he's got Noah. Is that his name?
Will.
Will.
Will's
Okay.
his name.
And so he's got like an inhaler. And and he's kind of a normal kid. That's kind of the whole thing. And as they're going to they get a tree, they chop it down, and then at one point Will kind of disappears, and they're running around kind of looking for him, and Will just appears kind of out from behind a tree or out from like a crook of a tree.
And he's got kind of a blank look on his
Mm-hmm.
face.
But they don't really think anything of it for whatever reason.
I say it seems very odd to me, but whatever. Maybe they're just not very good parents.
And so they go home.
We see a shadowy figure watching what they're doing.
Yep, as they get in their car, we see Big Earl.
Yes, I say they're about to find out why you don't play with Big Earl's wood.
And and so they go home, and like I think they go to like decorate the Christmas tree, and Will like smashes one of the ornaments.
Basically, it seems like he doesn't spend a lot of time with his family because he's a cop, so he's trying to have a nice time. But it seems like it's being, one, Will's acting very strangely, and two, he obviously has like unresolved issues like PTSD or whatever from the case that he saw with the two murdered kids, because he seems to like lash out in anger at like the slightest provocation.
Yeah, and like his wife Kim made like spaghetti, and like Will's eating the spaghetti like crazy, and like normally he doesn't eat that
Like
much.
he's never eaten before or whatever.
And like the Scott like goes to say something, and like Will doesn't respond, and then he's like, hey, I said something to you, and he kind of grabs him, and Will just stabs his hand with the fork.
Get forked, Dad.
And then and then at one point I think too, like Kim says something like, oh, Will hasn't used his inhaler since we got home. Kim and Scott kind of have a big blow up at each other.
And Scott's like, isn't that a good thing? And it's like, well, yeah, I guess, but it's kind of odd, don't you think?
Right, yeah, just the kid suddenly stopped using his
I
inhaler
suddenly
altogether.
don't have asthma anymore. Yeah, kind of odd.
And so then they I think Kim goes to take a shower.
Well, first he attempts to have sex with her, and apparently they haven't had sex in a long time.
Yeah. And so like she kind of shuts him down. She's like, I'm gonna go take a shower. And so like she goes to take a shower, and then Will's just standing in the bathroom staring at her, like as she gets out, kind of surprises her. She tells him to go to bed. And so then I think Scott's asleep, like on the couch, kind of laying in bed by himself, or laying on the couch by himself. Will's laying in bed in his own room, and then Kim goes to bed, and she has like this dream, and we see like kind of, or what she thinks is a dream, but we see some kind of being like slip under her covers and start like touching her and stuff like that. And she wakes up, and then there's no one there.
Yeah.
She goes into check on Will, and like the window's wide open or whatever, and she closes it. When she closes the window, we see like a monster in the reflection of the window where Will should be.
Yeah, it's weird. Will acts like he's incredibly hungry and likes to be outside in the cold.
So then I think she goes like back to her room. Scott wakes up, discovers that like all the Christmas presents have been destroyed.
Totally destroyed. The tree's all messed up, too.
Yeah, he goes to track down Will because he thinks Will did it. Will's not in his room, and I think this is where we get the scene where like Will crawls across the ceiling above him.
Incredibly creepy scene.
And then Kim, I think, maybe hears some of the scuffling going on, comes outside and like finds Scott dead with like his hand cut off.
Yes, I say it looked like it was way more than a scuffle, so I don't know how the hell she didn't hear it.
And and he's kind of wrapped up by the tree, like with some of the Christmas paper, and his hands like removed and maybe like sitting in the tree or something like that. Kim then gets a phone call from Big Earl, basically being like, "Is your son acting weird?
Yeah.
You need to bring him back.
Shouldn't have been in my damn grove.
Yeah, stop coming in my grove.
Shouldn't be touching my wood."
And so she's like, and at first she doesn't believe him. I think then she discovers all of this, and that's when she's like, she calls him back. He's like, "You need to bring him to me." And so she kind of like,
Yeah, but don't let on that you know.
yep, she kind of goes to approach him, and then we get what I think one of my favorite parts of the whole thing, where she's like trying to get Will to come out, and he's like kind of backing away from her, and she just smacks him in the side of the head with a baseball bat.
Yes. You know, what you wish people would do in a horror movie.
Shoves him in like a duffel bag.
Yeah.
And then she drives back out to the grove. She meets Big Earl on like his snowmobile. Snowmobile. I was gonna say snowplow. I knew that wasn't right. And he's like, yeah, they always try to get out, blah blah blah. And she's like, where's my son? He's like, I can't do anything about that. I can just take care of the.
When she drops the duffel bag at his feet, he gives it a kick too.
Yeah.
Like, you're back.
And then we see like a bunch of movement in the trees as like more of these kind of like, we don't really see him, but we kind of see the bright eyes of these monsters that look similar to like the Will reflection image.
Mm.
And they're all kind of making noise. And she's kind of like pointing a gun at Big Earl, kind of pointing a gun at the changeling. Like she's like, I just want my son back. I just want my son back. And like Big Earl like makes a noise. She accidentally pulls the trigger and shoots him. And like all these monsters kind of like, calm down, and like they all kind of vanish. And then Will comes out of the tree.
Well, after Big Earl's dead, the Will changeling looks over at him or whatever, and then she's like, I just want my son back. And he kind of stares at her for a minute and then goes off in the tree.
And then Will comes out and like,
I mean, if you want to go with the nice ending, Will comes back. If not, it could just be another change.
Right, it could be.
Who knows? But yeah,
I think we're supposed to believe that.
It seems like because she killed the guy oppressing them or whatever, they gave her son back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of how I take it. But yeah, I guess you could take it the other way. That no, it's still it's another changeling, which I also wouldn't put past him.
Yeah, because fucking changelings. People don't change, Steve. You're thinking of changelings.
So our third story, we cut back to Caprice, her just leaving the school, with her brother Duncan, her parents Taylor and Diane, as they go to visit Aunt Etta at her big fucking mansion in the middle of nowhere.
Her gigantic mansion. My God, how expensive that thing must be.
And like, I think, Taylor's like, oh, he's always trying to sell something. He's kind of an inventor or something.
Basically, it sounds like he's been running a long-term scam and he's out of money, so he's going to try to get some quote-unquote investment from Aunt Etta.
Yeah. And Aunt Etta's kind of onto the whole thing, and she kind of tells him to, tells them all to hit the road, or she's not going to help them, and they all kind of mill around, and I think Duncan like breaks a Krampus statue.
I don't even think he really breaks it. I think he just like kind of chips it a little bit while he's messing around with it.
Mm-hmm. And Gerhardt, the groundskeeper, like kind of chastises him.
My living manservant, Gerhardt.
And they all kind of are, they're basically kicked out after like Duncan does something. And then I think it turns out maybe Duncan stole the statue, like took it with him.
Get the fuck out of here.
And so they're all driving home, and the parents are still sniping at each other about stuff. And then they see something in the road that's very clearly the Krampus in this movie.
Where Krampus?
Like just like bounding across the road, but they spin out and drive into a ditch and are buried in snow.
Look, I stole the magic statue. You want to wear Krampus? That's how you get to wear Krampus.
And so they're like, all right, well, I guess we got to walk back to Aunt Etta's, and like Caprice is like, and walk back to Aunt Etta's and get raped by a bunch of hobos or like rednecks,
raped by rednecks and hillbillies.
And it's like there was a mansion over there.
I was gonna say you're like in a mansion in rural Canada. I'm pretty sure you're pretty safe.
And so like they're kind of trudging back to go to Aunt Etta's as the sun starts to set. And they're still all kind of sniping at each other. And this whole time, like Caprice, who I think, saw the Krampus for a second, like kind of, is like, there's something out here. There's something out here. And then we watch like the Krampus chain, like appear with like a meat hook, kind of Lobo's, like meat hook thing, I think, come and like grabs, the dad and like pierces him through the stomach and drags him off. Yeah. And they're able to kind of chase him down, and they're able to kind of free him. And then while that's going on, Duncan gets grabbed and taken.
Oh, I remember what happened. Duncan breaks the Krampus statue on purpose because Gerhardt, I think he chastises him about messing with it or whatever, and he like pushes it off the table on purpose.
That's right.
So I think because the first time I watched this, I thought there was something special to do with the statue, but I think they just pissed him off by breaking it.
And so Taylor, Diane, and Caprice are able to get into a church, and they kind of try to confess their sins. And like at one point, like Diane's like, Duncan was a good boy. I don't know what you're talking about. And Caprice is like, Mom, he killed every pet we had.
Yeah.
Like,
Serial killer.
I walked in on him murdering puppies or something like
He killed our cat. He killed insert cat name here.
And so and then like there's a banging on the church door. The dad's like, I'm gonna try and hold him off as Caprice and Diane head into the confession booth and kind of hide in there. Taylor gets killed by the Krampus, and then they're like, oh, maybe we're safe.
Yeah.
And then Caprice is like, Mom, stop touching my leg. And then she's like, I'm not. And they turn on the flashlight, and Krampus's tongue is up underneath the door, like licking at Caprice's leg. And it's like, who needs their Krampussiate? Like,
you disgust me, sir.
Diane then I think tries to like save Caprice, and like, you know, basically is like, you know, run for help.
It's basically a lost cause at this point.
And so Caprice is, you know, she's able to put some space between her and the Krampus, gets to Aunt Edda's house, starts like banging on doors. You know, nothing, you know, there's no,
and it doesn't make any sign that she hears her or whatever.
And then like the Krampus appears, starts kind of chasing after her. Caprice like slips and falls as the Krampus like starts to charge her. But there was like a big stack of wood right above where she tripped and fell, and just like kind of dumb luck, the Krampus runs right into like a big stake and gets pierced through the stomach.
Gets jabbed by Big Earl's wood.
And then like we see all this like kind of swirling magic stuff, and then like as the Krampus starts to die, and then it turns back into Gerhardt the gardener.
Classic Were Krampus.
And maybe they were convinced that Aunt Edda was the Krampus.
They thought maybe, or they brought the curse on themselves by breaking the statue. But no, it turns out they just pissed him off, and he's a Were Krampus. So bad luck with that.
And so like then Aunt Edda answers the door, and she's like, "Oh, I had no idea Gerhardt was the Krampus."
Yeah.
And you know, and they're talking, and then that's when like Caprice kind of like puts it all together. She's like, "You knew this whole time?" Like I think Aunt Edda then says something that basically lets on that she knew, or that she was kind of responsible for all this. And she's like, "You knew this whole time?" As then Caprice turns into like a new Were Krampus.
Her anger.
Where like the one we first saw was kind of blue, maybe like an icy blue. Caprice's Krampus is like white.
Yeah. I'm afraid in your anger you killed her.
And so I think, you know, as she transforms, we then cut to black, or, you know, that's kind of the end of that story.
End of segment.
So our last story is back to that Santa thing that we saw at the beginning. Santa,
awesome Santa, by the way.
So good. Santa is getting ready for Christmas. They're all, you know, they're putting the final touches. They're getting ready to go fly off with the reindeer, loading up the sleigh, all this stuff. And Mrs. Claus walks in, you know, with some cookies. She's like, "Oh, stock, you know, that you can all warm up and eat before the big night." And they're all kind of eating, but there's one elf named Shiny who's I think was coughing a little bit earlier, acting a little weird. And then at one point she's like, Shiny, don't you want a cookie? And Shiny's like, no, no, I don't want a cookie. And then, or I think Santa says like, Shiny, you don't want a cookie? No, I don't want a cookie. And then Mrs. Claus is like, "Oh, but Shiny, you always like my cookies." And then Shiny says like the iconic line, I already told you, you reindeer fucking snow whore, I don't want any goddamn cookies.
Yeah.
And he like takes the axe that he's holding in his hand that he was making toys with, and like cuts into his own hand with it.
Yep. I believe something may be wrong with Shiny.
And so like Shiny's acting weird and stuff like that. And I think that kind of the other elves haul him out. And then Santa's like standing in his office, kind of trying to put everything together.
Well, it seems like he knows what's happening, like it's happening again or whatever.
And there's a scene where like Shiny's standing on like a platform staring into the office that Santa's in. And basically we get this like great, I don't know, would you call it like almost like a Rampage movie?
Yeah.
Where essentially like Santa's walking through his factory fighting all these like monstrous zombie elves.
Yes, the elves have got some kind of zombie virus. Santa's got to basically put on his coat and grab his magic Santa staff and kick all their asses.
And we just get all these like great kills where like I think Santa like battles a couple of them in an elevator. He like does like, you know, he like one of them like crawls out of a mailbag and like Santa has to like fight it off. He's like chopping their heads off and shit with his magic
I was
staff.
gonna say, if you ever wanted to know what Kung Fu Santa would be like, just watch this.
Like it's hard to just like highlight piece by piece what happens. It's just basically Santa going through his workshop fighting zombie elves.
Like, I'm killing every elf in sight.
It's a blast. It's so good. He then I think at one point like finds Mrs. Claus, finds that she's infected too, so he has to kill her.
He kills all the elves, but then the light or whatever we find out is Krampus or whatever busting in.
Yeah, so then we cut back to the beginning of the movie where it's where he's in the stable. He's still trying to get preparations in order. You know, and then Krampus appears at the entrance, and Santa says his famous line, Krampus, the ancient enemy of Christmas.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that's how that works. I'm pretty sure Krampus is Santa's ally.
No, that's totally how that works. Krampus
I mean,
is a real son of a bitch.
American filmmaking has kind of made Krampus more of a bad guy than he is in actual Krampus folklore.
I don't know. He's pretty bad.
And so they have kind of this big tussle, and then we're gonna cut back to Dangerous Dan. As we said, Dangerous Dan's been reporting on all this stuff that's been happening at the mall, and then we hear the Krampus is about ready to be defeated, and he's like, "Norman, please stop!" And Santa's like, "What?"
Norman,
It's like,
don't kill me.
"Yeah, don't kill me, Norman." And like we get like this blink, and suddenly we realize it's Storm and Norman wearing a Santa outfit. Norman hates Christmas. He's been badgered into doing this, and the bright lights are all the cops lined out outside the front door, like
getting ready to breach the doors because all these elves he's been killing have been people in the mall.
Yeah.
He's been murdering.
the guy whose Krampus is just a dude wearing like a reindeer headband.
Like a mall manager or
Yeah,
whatever.
and like Norman's just like completely bewildered as we kind of get all these scenes of like Norman having a flashback to everything that happened prior to this, and like him going through murdering all the people in the mall like one by one. That'd be a fun movie. I would like a movie just about that scene.
That could be cool.
And so then he Norman has like this moment of clarity, and then he flashes back to the fantasy world where he's Santa, and, raises up his weapon, and then the police open fire and unload into Norman, causing him to die.
He's dead.
And then we get Shatner coming on. Dangerous Dan comes on the radio at one time and says something like, why does this always happen at Christmas in Bailey Downs? We must be cursed, and that's kind of the end of the movie.
Quick note, as the William Shatner tie-ins go on and on, he's clearly getting more and more drunk.
He gets progressively drunk I think at one point, like, he's like, "Oh, I'm all out of eggnog," and then he just starts drinking rum straight from the bottle.
What is he says something where he mixes up his words hilariously.
Oh, I have it on
You
my.
have the quote.
I have it. It's one of my quotes.
I didn't want to spoil it if you have it for a quote.
And then I think he's trying to like hit on Sheila, like the lady who's like like the radio station manager.
Sheila, you bitch.
And then we get a couple scenes during like the end credits of like Shatner still pretending to be Dangerous Dan, just yelling at people on the radio.
Yeah.
I'll say Merry Christmas if I want to say Merry Christmas.
Is it Shirley or Sheila? I can't remember.
Oh, I can't remember.
I don't remember.
We don't ever see her. I think she just kind of
she's
exists.
an off-screen thing. Yeah.
Anything else before we kind of get into it? Get into our
I think
minutia.
We pretty much covered it all.
So yeah, we'll. Where do you want to kick off with then? Do you want to do quotes since we were kind of talking about quotes
we might
anyway?
As well start with quotes.
All right, Christmas carols, favorite quotes. So yeah, the one Jeff kind of mentioned was Dangerous Dan goes, "Throw another eggnog on the fire."
Yeah.
And then like he stops and he's like, throw another log on the fire and get yourself another glass of eggnog.
Yeah.
But that line alone, like that's become a thing I say every time I like pour myself a glass. I'll be like, throw another eggnog on the fire.
All right. You did one, so I'll do one. When they get to Aunt Edda's mansion, I think it's Duncan who says, "It's like Dracula and Paul Bunyan gate up and builds a dream."
I remember that line. The Storm and Norman, not so much a line, but when Dangerous Dan's kind of chastising him on the radio, Norman holds like just writes "fuck Christmas" and slams it on
Yes.
the glass in the studio.
That's great. The one you said earlier. I said I didn't want a goddamn cookie, you reindeer fucking snow whore.
Yeah, I had that one too.
Oh, when Norman, when he's Santa, he's like, elves coming back to life. That doesn't make any sense. Unless he's behind it.
Yeah.
It's like, who's he? How has this happened before? How do you know what's going on, Santa?
But yeah, there's some other. I didn't get them all down, but during the end credits, like Shatner has a bunch of other like lines, like one where he's like, you know, like I said, one where he's like, "I'll say Merry Christmas if I goddamn want to say Merry Christmas." Like, and like I think he's like, he gets in trouble for like calling people Orientals, like
Yeah.
and stuff like that, just like ridiculous stuff.
When Caprice, when Gerhardt impales himself in Where Krampus form, she's like, "Merry Christmas, motherfucker." Real Die Hard moment.
The one thing we forgot to mention is Caprice's family is Dangerous Dan. Like Dangerous Dan is Caprice's granddad.
Yeah.
Because at one point he's like, "Oh, you know, I'll be here with you guys all Christmas Eve. You know, my family's not here." And he kind of looks at a picture, and it's Caprice and her family. It's their Christmas card.
Mm-hmm.
So that even kind of ties that back together. We forgot to mention that
I mean,
one.
it is all tied together. I mean, honestly, given the way that they laid the movie out with it all being interwoven, they tied it all together pretty well.
The last one I had, it's not so much a quote, but at the end of the credits where it normally will say like no animals were harmed in the production of this film, it says no elves were harmed in the production of this film.
Which I'm not sure I quite believe, but whatever.
I mean, all those we watch an elf get like an elf get like their head chopped off and shit. Like
It's some pretty brutal kills, and like I said, the special effects are really well done.
no, that you know like we mentioned, like it's hard to watch or it's hard to describe what happens in that scene. You just have to watch Santa just go on this rampage through his toy store, murdering all these elves. It's great. Moving on, unless you have any other.
I
quotes.
just wanted to say it's not really. It has nothing to do with this section really, but the aunt who loves to drink eggnog and get drunk from the Krampus movie reminds me a lot of William Shatner's character.
Yep. Yeah, Conchita, whatever
When
from
she-
Two and a Half Men.
like,
She's very similar to.
She
Dangerous
busts through the
Dan.
door and she's like, "Where's the nog?"
I hope the Q app pops Krampus up on our list this year. That's a fun movie.
Know it will.
We had a blast watching that last year at Flix. That
Yeah,
was a lot of
That
fun.
was a good time.
All right, let's move on to Broken Bulb, Brilliant Bulb. One thing you would fix. One thing you want to praise in the movie.
Okay.
I'll go first. My Broken Bulb, I kind of already mentioned it. That there aren't more of these. There, you know, Dangerous Dan sets up that like this could be a series of anthology movies by saying this always happens in Bailey Downs at Christmas time. I want more of these movies. Like I know that's kind of a dumb thing to complain about. You know, normally we try to pick something that like we would actually fix in the movie.
Yeah.
But that's what I would fix. I want more of these movies. There's this one is so much fun, and there should be more of them.
Yeah, I agree. I would like at least one more. While you can still get everybody back.
Right. Or yeah,
Or at least most of the people back.
The only person the only person you need is probably Shatner, and then maybe you get maybe you get Grace or not Grace, you get Molly, like because like she's still alive. Maybe you get
follow-up.
Kim and Will,
Yeah.
and you get Caprice, and you kind of have them in the background of
Right.
scenes.
Have them be like intersecting into new stories or whatever. That could work.
And but it's a focus on different horrible things happening.
Oh, yeah.
I would love that in one of these movies.
That would be cool. My Broken Bulb was just the way that they had it laid out. I mean, they made it work fairly well with the intertwined stories, but the problem is one of the stories was a lot weaker than the other two, and having it woven throughout, plus having the Dangerous Dan interludes, plus having the Norman Santa Claus rampage mixed in, it felt like a lot going on to keep track of watching it the first time.
Yeah.
And I think if they had just laid it out in the traditional anthology style, having the three stories at least separated, they still could have done the Dangerous Dan breaks and even like the Santa breaks if they wanted to. But I think having it all woven together is a bit much for like a casual viewer to keep track of.
No, I kind of agree with that. You and I had talked off the air, like maybe do a thing where like you kind of do the whole opening that you did, and then you go to the school. You put up like a little title card that says like a ghost story. You introduce Caprice in that scene, and then you tell the whole ghost story, story. And with you got Officer Scott in there. You got all that, and then you cut to like the scene of like Caprice like yelling at her parents like, "I'm coming, Dad." You cut back to that scene. Maybe you do like some of the Santa stuff. You do some of the Shatner stuff, and then you cut back to Caprice, and then you do like Christmas Vacation, and you go and tell that whole story, and they drive past Scott's car, and then you do that. You do more Santa stuff, more Dangerous Dan stuff. Cut back to Scott, and his family going into the Grove. And, and then you do like, a Changeling, and then you kind of round out the rest of the stuff. And like that might be a fun way to have done it.
I mean, honestly, that's not really much of a knock against it. It was just, I think they could have laid it out better, and maybe it would have been more accessible for people who aren't used to following so many stories at once.
No, I agree. That's certainly like a common complaint I've seen, and I get where you're coming from. Brilliant Bulb. One thing you want to praise about this movie?
Just the level of like care that went into the production of it. I'm assuming that it must have been different directors, but probably the same crew for the segments that were shot. I'm not sure though, because they didn't really have much information, like I said earlier, about how this was made or anything like that.
It's hard to track down more information about this.
But no, just like the attention to detail on the costumes and the special effects. And I mean, the writing is good even in the weakest entry. I would consider the school one probably the weakest entry for me. But even that one is still better than a lot of the stuff we've watched, honestly. But I mean, and just it seemed like all the actors did a really good job and did the best they could with what they had to work with. And like I said, the creature effects, like the Were Krampus was really well done. I mean, honestly, it's one of the better Krampuses we've seen. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see some much worse ones later on based on
almost certainly
some of the stuff that Jay's shown me on the queue. But this one was really solid, and like the transformation scene where Caprice changes at the end, that one was pretty well done. I mean, we talked about it earlier, but just the attention to detail in the Santa's Workshop sets, it looked really nice, and just the gore and like the special effects. And even like the stunt coordination for the fight scenes between Santa and the elves, because I'm sure that was probably really hard to shoot, keeping the perspective, like making the elves appear small or whatever next to Santa. That would have been really hard. Even just the effects in the ghost parts, like where they flash the nuns doing the abortion and stuff like that, still look really nice. So I'd just say the overall attention to detail in the production and the effort that everybody put in, I think makes it shine probably above what it honestly should, based on like the level of material.
Yeah, I know. I completely get what you're saying. Like for kind of a small budget movie, they did a really good job, especially with the effects.
It seemed like everybody really put in the work and actually cared about making a good movie.
No, so I kind of had a joke one, and then I kind of had like a real answer. My joke answer was that this movie shouldn't be this much fun to watch. Like it is a blast to watch, and like it has no right to be this much fun.
My joke answer was gonna be Shatner didn't get drunk enough.
But my actual answer is kind of like you said, the effects. Like to point to one specifically is how cool the Krampus looks, and like when we get the scenes with the. And knowing that the actor like was basically standing out in like Canadian winter, like without a shirt on, like just really impressive. It just looks so monstrous, and I'd say maybe the 2015 Krampus might be.
Well, I mean, it's a completely different style of Krampus, so it's even hard to compare the two.
Right? No, absolutely. But like certainly it's a much better looking Krampus than I think like Krampus Unleashed, which I've not seen, but I've seen images of what the Krampus looks like in that movie, and it's night and day.
I mean, it was night and day compared to Frau Peaches too.
Yep. No, it looks really good. Like I think I saw someone online kind of compared it to speaking of the 2015 Krampus, comparing it to Michael Dougherty's Trick or Treat, which the movie with Sam, the little boy with the bag on his head, and that's also an anthology. There are scenes like this it like it feels very much like that movie. It feels very similar to Trick or Treat.
Oh, and that tongue effect, nice and disgusting, just
Yep.
the way we like it.
But yeah, so yeah, no, my brilliant bulb is essentially like the same thing. Just the effects look awesome. Like,
I mean, even the blood effects looked really good, which usually that's one of the things they have to cheap out on these is the blood never really looks that realistic or good in these lower budget movies. But like the way that the blood oozes out of his hand when he chops it with the cleaver, shiny when he's pissed off or whatever about the cookies, it looks really good.
no, it really does. It looks awesome. Moving on, Christmas sweater outfits, sets, things you want to shout out.
I think
in
we
that.
pretty much covered most of that in our last thing, but definitely Santa's suit, like top tier Santa suit, I'd have to say.
I kind of put down like the entire Santa story looks awesome. Like it looks so cool. But like George Buza might be the second coolest Santa we have behind Goldberg.
Definitely.
Like, I can't think of a cooler Santa.
No, definitely. And like it was a weird choice for his weapon, I thought at first, but honestly, the staff he uses it like really makes it cool.
No, I agree. Like that is such a cool. It's the staff is cool, and he kind of he looks like an older Santa, which like we've had like a lot of kind of younger killer Santas and stuff like that, and having this kind of old worn down Santa I think looks really neat.
He looks more what you would expect. I mean, Goldberg looks nothing like Santa really. But he looks more like what you would expect Santa to look like, but he still like kicks ass. So I think that's pretty cool.
The one other thing I kind of wanted to shout out is Caprice's dad Taylor kind of looks like Chevy Chase in Christmas Vacation.
Yeah,
like I don't know that's what, but like to me, like I saw him and I'm like, oh, that's what they're going for.
Yeah,
like,
they very well could have been going for that.
We'll move on to Christmas Spirit. How Christmassy is the movie? How Christmassy are the kills?
I mean, pretty Christmassy, I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a lot of, as far as Christmas spirit, I'd say it's pretty much topping out the meter on that. And the kills, I mean, there's a lot of good Christmas kills.
No, there's Christmas stuff in like every scene. Like we get also pretty you can tell it is Christmas in this town.
Even in the framing device, Dangerous Dan's got a Christmas sweater and he's talking about Christmas and he's got the eggnog and everything.
I think there's like lights around the window of the radio station and like he'll like he's like, oh, I'm here for 12 hours spinning tunes and like it'll cut in and it'll be like finishing up like rocking around the Christmas tree or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, the kills, I mean, it's, even though, the kills might not be Christmassy, the fact that Santa's going around murdering a bunch of elves, insanely Christmassy.
In the Christmas workshop, too, that really helps the Christmas factor. I mean, and the only one I wouldn't say really has much Christmas, I mean, unless you're going biblical Christmas, because, I mean, when Ben gets killed by the ghost, he's basically in that Christ crucified pose. Mm-hmm. You do something like that.
Well, and that whole story is essentially Immaculate Conception kind of thing.
I mean, it's got a heavy Christmas theme, but the two kills, we don't really see her kill Dylan. That's kind of off screen, and his kill, I mean, is I'd say borderline Christmassy. Mm. But I mean, the Changeling kill is very Christmassy. The one where he kills his dad.
Yeah, like wraps him up in the paper, hides him behind the tree. I agree with that.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd say you can't really, if there's anything you were going to criticize this movie on, it definitely couldn't be the Christmas spirit level.
Do we want to, before we kind of get into our final rating, do we want to kind of rate these 4 stories kind of?
Yeah, I would rate them in order first and then overall.
All right. Do you want to do best to worst, worst to best?
Let's do worst to best. That's always fun.
All right. Number 4, the kind of my least favorite of the 4 was the ghost story. We kind of already mentioned that already. There's not a lot to that story.
I mean, it's competently made and it's not like incredibly boring or anything, but compared to the other ones, it's just kind of weak.
Number 3, I had the Changeling story. It's fun. There's a lot of fun stuff that happens in it, but it's just, to me, like, not just, and it's not that it's bad, it's just not as good as the other 2.
I had the vacation, family vacation in the 3rd spot. I just thought it had some good moments, and I liked the whole interaction between the family and how they all have some terrible thing about them, some terrible personality flaw, basically. And Aunt Etta was interesting, Gerhard was interesting, and obviously we already talked about how cool the Krampus was. But I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I felt like it didn't really have as much story as I would have liked. It was pretty much just them making fun of each other and then getting murdered by Krampus.
Yeah. I don't know. That scene, as you kind of when you kind of alluded to the 2015 Krampus movie, like that part especially feels very like kind of lifted from Michael Dougherty's Krampus, and which is fine. Like,
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna steal from something good.
yep. So my number 2 was the Krampus story. I kind of enjoyed just the as I said, like it kind of feels kind of lifted directly from the 2015 Krampus movie. Everyone kind of being dicks to each other and stuff like that. Just I don't know, an interesting story, and I kind of like the direction it went in.
My number 2 was the Santa story with Storm and Norman. I thought it's awesome. The effects are awesome. The action is awesome. But I mean, really, and it doesn't even make sense in the context of what he's doing. Like that quote I said earlier, where he's like doing this cryptic thing, like elves coming back from the dead. He must be behind me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome, but there's really, until you find out what is actually happening, it's basically a nonsense kung fu movie, which is not bad.
No, yeah,
I mean,
they put an action movie in the middle of
Yeah.
of a Christmas horror movie.
but I mean, it's still cool, and it's got the zombie horror theme, and it's got all the Christmas trappings from the workshop, and being Santa doing the kung fu fighting or whatever. But yeah, it wasn't really a horror movie, I think is why I put it second. It was really good though. I'm not saying it was bad or anything.
And for me, it's my number 1, and it's just kind of this. It's this kind of the zombie elves thing. Like it's kind of creepy here. Our local haunted house, the Slaughterhouse, does like kind of a Krampus event. I think like a couple other haunted houses, or I think it's happening more and more often at more haunted houses across the country. And they've got like people dressed as kind of like I think here they call them helves.
Yeah.
which is kind of a neat take on the thing, but they're all kind of like demonic looking elves, and so that it kind of gives me that kind of feel of like you're walking through this haunted Santa's workshop kind of thing, as you know Santa's battling his way through all these zombie elves. It kind of feels more like a 2004 Dawn of the Dead necessarily than it feels like a like an actual out and out horror movie, but I really enjoy the story, and I really enjoy kind of the twist ending.
That's proof that Zack Snyder can make good things, by the way.
Right, absolutely.
He's got to go back in time.
Gotta get back in time.
But no, I'm not going to hate on that choice. I could definitely see that being a number 1. Honestly, it was close for me, but I ultimately ended up picking the Changeling just because, one, I like seeing other pagan creatures and things, because usually there's only like the big 3 that get attention. And I thought it was really well done. The atmosphere of tension between the husband and the wife, and then you add in the tension of the kid, something obviously being wrong with the kid after they steal Big Earl's wood. And just the like little outbursts of violence where he like stabs him through the hand, and the little rages that the dad has seem like very realistic with like the stress that someone who's a cop probably goes through. And I think there is like a correlation of cops having like family violence problems from like unresolved issues.
No, you can kind of see him like clearly recovering from like PTSD and stuff like that.
And just the Changeling was an interesting creature, and I like that they still managed to tie it into Christmas by having them like live in this grove of Christmas trees and having the house decorated up for Christmas and everything. And apparently changelings are also like incredibly creepy perverts or something.
Right.
Because he climbs into bed with his mom and feels her up.
Right. Yeah. No, there's all sorts of weird kind of stuff happening with that.
But oh my god, the scene of him crawling on the ceiling behind where his dad's trying to figure out where he is, super well done, super creepy.
It feels very out of like Exorcist 3.
Yes.
I think there's a similar scene.
I thought this was the most atmospheric of all the stories that drew you in most as like an actual horror story. And I thought that it was I thought that especially the actress who played the mom, she did a really good job when she realizes obviously that the guy who called her wasn't just, messing with her, and that obviously something's very wrong with her son. And she just smacks him upside the head with the baseball bat. And
we get the metallic like aluminum thunk.
That's so good. And yeah, and then, you know, depending on how you interpret it, which I think you're supposed to interpret it the happy way. I'm just a cynical bastard, so that's why I interpret it the bad way. But no, actually having a happy ending. Well, I mean, happy-ish. His dad's still dead.
Yeah, happy enough for what happens in the rest of this
But,
movie.
I mean, the kid didn't get butchered and killed, so that's what you would expect from these other ones.
So let's kind of get into our final rating. I'm sure listeners can kind of guess that we really enjoyed this, but we rate these movies on 1 of 3 categories. Are they ho hilarious? Are they you will be sorry? Or are they seasonally scary? Jeff, why don't you kick us off?
It was kayfabe the whole time. This bitch is you will be sorry. No, I got to give this one a seasonally scary, just based on the strength of the Santa Kung Fu and the Changeling story. I'd say it's well worth watching. It's got moments of atmospheric horror. It's got your classic like found footage style ghost hunting movie woven in. It's got the parody. Like, I think you were right about it being like kind of a parody of a Christmas Vacation almost. You got your Krampus. You know, Krampus is all the rage with the kids these days.
These kids, they love their Krampus.
Yeah. And no, it's so well made, and you got the plot device of Dangerous Dan commenting and driving things along. William Shatner's great, and he put in a ton of effort, obviously, even though was probably 5 minutes of the movie.
Right.
He's incredibly memorable.
Maybe he probably got paid for like a day of work.
Yeah.
Like,
but I mean, he put in the work. Obviously, they got what they paid for, and just overall, I think everybody did a great job. And if you can get it on like Blu-ray and pick it up, it'd be great to own, I think. And you could make this like a Christmas tradition, watch it every year.
Yeah, we've got it on our shelf here. Yeah, for me, hilarious. Like, the Dangerous Dan stuff is so fucking funny. You know, the twist on Storm and Norman is hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, the whole you know, I told you your reindeer fucking snow whore, like that. There's some funny lines, and just you know, I think, you know, there are some creepy moments. Like, it's, you know, it's kind of somewhere between seasonally scary and hilarious, but just you know, this movie's more fun to watch, I think, than it is like necessarily like kind of like a tense or like a like you know, the reason for me that like Black Christmas is still kind of seasonally scary is like, you know, some of the stuff still just like, even though I've seen that movie probably more than I've seen just about any movie ever, like, you know, there are scenes that still make my hair stand up on end. And like this movie, I just watch and I just have a blast. Like it's so silly. Like there's so many funny things, and I love it so much. Like I said jokingly, like, a movie shouldn't be this fun to watch, and yet it is. Like, it's just a blast. It's over the top ridiculousness, and I love it to bits. Like, it's so much fun.
No, the creep factor of the Changeling episode is what pushed me into the seasonally scary category. That, and I was trying to look at it as you know, outside of our perspective, because we thought it was hilarious. But when you find out that Norman's actually just been murdering people the entire time he's been doing his cool action, I could see that being disturbing for some people.
Well, and you know, the ghost story is adequately creepy. Like,
it's got some atmospheric creepiness, especially if you got the whole. Because I know there's a lot of people out there. There's like a subgenre of horror that's like Catholic horror, basically. So if that kind of thing gets you, you know, if spooky bitches running out of paintings gets you, you might appreciate that one.
Or appearing out of magazine racks or whatever the fuck happens in that second trailer.
Whatever, yeah. Or appearing behind you in a bombed out church in World War II. You know.
What's the...
Or spitting the blood of Jesus in your face, stuff like that.
Oh man, so funny. But yeah, no, it's like, yeah, it's somewhere in between, but it is over. If you take anything from this movie is worth watching. Yes. I think that's what to take from it.
It has our incredibly large stamp of approval.
Like, yeah, we've given this to a handful of other movies, and this one deserves it just as much as the other ones do. It's you know, the ones that we've praised kind of to the hilt, like this one deserves to be praised just as much as they do.
Take it from me, kid. I'm a man with a lot of weight.
That we are. Let's get our naughty list. We'll take the villain of the movie.
How are we gonna rate this? Because we got multiple villains. We got whatever the zombie virus is that corrupts the elves. We've got, Norman
Right.
is a villain. We got the Were-Krampus. Well, 2 Were-Krampuses, because presumably she murders her aunt afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we've got the Changeling.
So if we had to, for the last anthology we did, I think we wound up having Jeffrey Combs be our bad guy or whatever, and so we kind of picked the person kind of responsible for the whole thing, even though there were a bunch of stories, and like certainly like Norman's story, Norman would be the bad guy. It wouldn't be like all the zombie elves.
Yeah.
But if we're kind of going to go with that like, Norman murdered a bunch of people in the mall at Christmas time. Is Dangerous Dan the bad guy because he sent Norman to the mall to when Norman clearly hates Christmas?
I was going to say, it's hard to say. Did he do it? Is society just evil? Is that why Norman hates himself and everything around him? It's hard to say, really.
Like this one is really hard because it's hard to place. Do we put the Changeling, the Krampus, the Ghost?
Well, if we take just sheer kill count, it has to be Norman because he killed way more. Because the Changeling only killed one person.
Yep.
Itself. Say Norman killed multiple people. Krampus only killed the family, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Ghost only kills
4 people. 4 people.
Yeah, if you count the 2 previous murders.
Mm.
So yeah, Norman has the kill count. If you're going by power level, I'd say it would either have to be the Ghost or the Krampus, because the Ghost seems to have the usual Ghost Force powers, and the Krampus is the Were-Krampus, obviously.
I think we put I think we got to take Norman.
No,
like that's
if we're gonna go our usual metric of just sheer kill count, then it's got to be Norman.
Like Norman, and I think too, like the whole like elves returning from the dead. It's Norman going and killing like he kills one person, and then in his memory like, oh, that's another, like that's the same elf back, but it's a different person he killed. So there's probably 20, 30 some people that Norman fucking kills in this
if
movie.
He's butchering his way through a mall on Christmas Eve, it's gonna be packed.
So I think we got to go with Norman, and if that's the case, maybe just below four bird Santa.
Yeah, I'd say he's probably around 4 bird Santa power level,
like
especially if he's in his delusional state.
While 4 bird Santa is very like unintentionally, I think, silly.
Yeah,
like this has kind of the same feel to it while being maybe a little more purposefully silly. Like, and so that's the different, and like. So, but there's also 2 of the 4 bird Santa, and I think I would put them just maybe a little bit above Storm and Norman.
4 birds, 'tis enough for one night.
God, that fucking movie. Oh my God. Well, speaking of things we've done in the past this year, we're gonna this week we're not gonna dive into our email inbox because it is our 1-year anniversary. We're going to kind of talk about the year in review in a segment we like to call
Garbage Day! Huh? No!
So it's our kind of year in review. We're gonna skip over me making Jeff drink something weird or eat something weird.
It's a disgusting 7-month-old Christmas beverage.
Or something. So instead we're gonna kind of go over. We highlighted a couple things we want to talk about this year, or after this year and stuff like that. Just kind of end of season 1, I think, is kind of how you phrased it. I thought that was appropriate. So we're gonna just kind of go over a handful of things. We'll start with favorite movie you watched this year, Jeff, for this podcast.
Favorite movie I watched this year for this podcast. If we're going by sheer enjoyment factor, I would have to say it would have to be this one, A Christmas Horror Story.
Okay. Oh, I think that's a good one. In all actuality, like as I said beforehand, my favorite movie is Black Christmas. And that's certainly my favorite movie we watched this year because I love that movie. But yeah, this one would be up there. I think Silent Night, Deadly Night would be up there.
I figured you'd either pick Black Christmas or Silent Night, Deadly Night.
The Leech too.
Yes.
I thought that one was a blast.
I considered The Leech, but it's like I didn't really have as much fun watching The Leech as I did watching this one.
Yeah, The Leech just makes you feel insanely uncomfortable.
The Leech makes you feel dirty. I get enough of that on my own.
Biggest surprise, movie you were most surprised by, like the quality of, or
I was most surprised about Santa Claus, Claws, and the fact that it was basically just a softcore porno and actually included a softcore porno in the special features with all the Santa shit cut out of it. They're like, we know what you're here to see. But no, it was. I've heard it talked about constantly, and I know you have too, because that's why you were so excited when it finally came up on the wheel. We were like, "Oh, sweet, this will be fun," and it was not that fun. It was like, it blew. Honestly, it surprised me how something that's. I mean, I guess it's just the factor of it's nostalgia. Maybe people might have seen this on TV a long time ago and were eager to go back and see it again. Or maybe it's just, I know there's a large collection of people who just love schlock, and the worse the better for their entertainment factor. But it's like, it has to balance at a certain point for me. If something is too bad, I don't enjoy it.
For me, the biggest surprise was Letters to Satan Claus, a movie that, you and I had done quite a bit of work of like finding like this list of movies and compiling like
gonna pick that.
over 200 some movies. And this movie that like neither of us had ever really heard of just popped up, and just an absolute delight. Just so funny.
It was really good.
Like there was on the Christmas, our Christmas subreddit. There was like a question where someone was like, "What's your favorite Christmas movie of the last 5 years?" And somebody put down Letters to Satan Claus. Like, and absolutely right. Like that is, it's as a spoof of a Hallmark movie. Like,
Yes.
it's just a sci-fi original movie has no right to be like as much fun as we had watching that.
It was on my short list. I had that. I had The Leech. I had Christmas Horror Story. I had Silent Night, Deadly Night. So they were all contenders.
Biggest disappointment, movie that you were excited for, but kind of wound up being a letdown.
You go ahead and go first, because I got to consider this one.
So I mean, I think it was. I'm kind of torn. The two that I've been thinking about are Silent Night, Bloody Night, and I remember thinking like, oh man, this is an old one. This is a classic. I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and certainly our lack of enjoyment of that movie was down to the quality of the DVD. And so like, I will admit that like there is a direct issue between that and what we saw. And I think we've even said, if we do one of the sequels, or when we do one of the sequels, I might go back and see if I can watch a better version of it and see if I enjoy it more, because it just, the DVD quality was so fucking bad on that movie. The other one that, last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago, Trapped Alive. I mean, we're promised a mutant cannibal. We don't get a mutant cannibal. But I think the other one is Santa Claus, CLAWS. It's one of the things where like I've heard so, as we were kind of saying, I've heard so many people talk about this movie, and for it to be what it was, I just found myself so disappointed.
See, I was torn. I was really disappointed with Trapped Alive and the fact that there was like so little going on in such a long, boring movie. But ultimately, I ended up settling on Mother Krampus. That's one of the most disappointing things we've done in this last season, because it's like, one, it has nothing to do with Krampus. It's like, it's completely its own thing.
Right.
And the mispronunciation of the name constantly, which, while hilarious, was like, okay, so these people don't even know what the hell they're doing, basically. It's like these actors act like they didn't even film their scenes together. And just the kind of, I was really disappointed in the effects for Mother Krampus. I was kind of like, this is what we've been building up to. This is the big bad thing.
Right.
And just, I mean, the story was a letdown and disappointing. And just the weird, what did we think it was at the beginning?
I think it was a bunch of puke. I think we thought it was a bunch of puke on the ground. We
literally thought it was a bunch of vomit, and it was supposed to be candy. It was disappointments at every turn, and we had high hopes for it to be hilarious, but it ended up making us very, you'll be sorry.
No, I think that's a good one. Favorite episode we did. I certainly, I mean, I do the editing. I go back and kind of listen through, and I make my own assumptions about what I think like a good episode is, and then occasionally like I'll listen to it again like once it comes out, and and try to do that. But what was your kind of favorite episode, or the most fun you had doing an episode this year?
I mean, this was another hard one to pick because it's like we had a blast doing the Wolf of Snow Hollow. That was an early one that we both liked doing. Jack Frost, we had a lot of fun doing that one. We had a lot of fun doing Four Birds, Once Upon a Time at Christmas. I'd say we both enjoyed Terror Train. That was one of the first movies we ever watched together.
Yep.
And Nutcracker Massacre, another anthology that we enjoyed.
Holiday Hell.
Holiday Hell, that was the one. I always get Nutcracker Massacre and Holiday Hell mixed up for some reason. But no, yeah, Holiday Hell was another good one, which I was kind of disappointed on that one too because I didn't get very many views in comparison to the other ones. I think people would like it if they checked it out. But no, ultimately I had to settle on just the riffing we had at Once Upon a Time at Christmas as being my favorite.
I certainly some of the ones you've shouted out. Other ones I will throw out. I thought our Silent Night, Deadly Night episode was a lot of fun.
That was a good episode.
I thought we had a blast with that one. The other one that I really, really early on, and I haven't gone back and listened to it since. And I think at some point we hit a point where like our episode quality kind of improved a little bit.
We got our formula down more.
But 13 Slays Till Xmas.
Yes.
I thought that was a fun episode. We had a lot to talk about because we had 13 different stories to tell.
Honestly, for me, that was the first episode where I was like, I think this podcast can work.
And so like that's one that I thought, but I really, I also I enjoyed Chris Stam's Twister. I thought that was a really fun episode that we did.
That was a really fun one to do. Yeah.
But I think for me it's either Silent Night, Deadly Night, just because like we had a lot to kind of bring to the table for that episode, or it was 13 Slays Till Xmas, just because it was neither of us had seen it. I had bought it because I was buying a copy of Mike's I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday, and I was like, oh, hey, it's the same company. I'll pick this one up too.
I thought that was a good episode too.
Yeah. What? No. And hint, that we'll be coming back to that here in a minute. But yeah, I one of those two. But I think a lot of our episodes have been pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say we had a lot of fun discussing The Leech too. I almost picked that one.
Yeah. No, that was a good one too. Man, a lot of good ones. Favorite villain, favorite bad guy we've had in one of these movies.
Oh man. Well, I was going to pick Four Birds Santa, but I was
because it's so silly.
Yes, it's like he's just the most ridiculous villain I think we've had so far. But I was kind of torn because I really liked the werewolf, quote unquote, in Wolf of Snow Hollow. I thought that was really interesting and well done. And no, I'm going to go with Santa Claus. No, definitely not that. Honestly, the Were-Krampus was a contender too, just from the cool factor. But no, ultimately, I think out of this first season of villains, I'm gonna settle on the werewolf, quote unquote, from Wolf of Snow Hollow.
I think that's a good one. For me, oh man, favorite villain. Certainly Santa Slay Santa Goldberg, as we mentioned earlier. Certainly the coolest looking Santa we've had, followed by Storm and Norman. I'm trying to think who else. Man, there are so many good ones.
I'll say I know you love Jack Frost.
Yeah, no, Jack Frost was a great one too. I mean, and certainly shout outs to, as you mentioned, Terror Train, My Bloody Valentine. I mean, Michael Myers. We did a Halloween episode.
That'd be too cliche.
But yeah, like it's kind of hard to pick one of those three.
Well, I know you love Billy.
Drew, yeah, I like both Billies. I like both Billy Chapman from Silent Night, Deadly Night and Billy from Black Christmas. I might actually go with the Leech, like whatever,
whatever,
whether it's David.
Yeah. We'll just say David.
Like
simpler.
Yeah. Whoever the villain in the Leech is. I don't even remember who we selected as our villain in the Leech. Maybe we said everybody. I don't remember.
We said everybody sucked, but ultimately we settled on David because he's the actual murderer.
Yeah, and so, but I don't know. It just, I still kind of find myself as we've talked about before, like there are kind of scenes that stick with you and things you think about, and that scene of David's sitting in the house. It's Christmas Eve. The clock strikes 12. Like, what child is this starts playing on the radio? He's wreathed in like flashing red and green Christmas lights, holding a shotgun, his face all bandaged up because he just got the shit beat out of him.
Yeah.
Like also the scene in the church where he's preaching and then in the darkness, like to nobody in the congregation because nobody showed up. Like, you know, murders Rico. Like I just, David is such a fucking monster, and I kind of love it. Like,
well, you want to know my joke pick? I'll give you a joke pick too. I was gonna say the slasher tornado from Chris Dam's Twister.
that is a good one.
It was out to ruin Johnny Rico's life.
What about the giant Nutcracker and Nutcracker Massacre that had trouble walking upstairs?
I was gonna say, I'm surprised you didn't pick that one for your favorite villain.
And then the last one, I think probably kind of our biggest joke. Favorite kind of original song. Favorite.
Well, I know you love the warm side of the door.
I do love the warm side of the door.
I think it's got to be the one that I continually sing over and over and over again. I don't want to spend Christmas by myself.
When we were going over this, you mentioned even My Bloody Valentine has has the Ballad of Harry Warden at the end.
Yes, that was a close second for me.
That's a great one, but I think for me, like it might be the Santa's Watching song from Silent Night Deadly Night. I think that's a fun one.
I mean, one I almost picked that you mentioned earlier was the ending song from A Christmas Horror Story.
It's Christmas Eve. Like that's such a cool song. I like that one. I mean, even there's not so much music in it, but like Black Christmas has all kind of the neat stuff. But yeah, you might. And we can't forget Chris Dam's Twister, Christmas in Hollywood, after a movie about Texas.
Christmas, gonna go for a Hollywood Christmas.
While we're living in Texas. But no, I think you're right. I think it might be Warm Side of the Door, just because that song was so funny.
You always go back to it.
So yeah, if as we kind of hinted, we're very soon. We hope to have for our next episode. We hope to have Mike Lombardo, the creator director of I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday, on to talk about it. Not only to talk about that movie, but also to do a normal episode where we'll talk about one of his favorite Christmas horror movies.
Brace yourself, Mike.
And if you have any questions for him, any questions for us, get in touch with us. Send us an email. Our email address is horrorfortheholidays@gmail.com. As we were, I think off the air, we were kind of joking. I mean, we'll take any questions you have for Mike. Like if
any questions,
if you want to ask him about my weird conspiracy theory that no one ate ass before 9/11, write an email and ask about that, and we'll ask Mike it on the air.
Yes, we will. We're not afraid to do the hard-hitting interview questions.
But certainly if you have, questions about, making a movie, if you have any questions about White Doomsday.
I mean, any questions about writing a book? He's also a successful author.
Yep. He not only does he have Don't Tap the Glass, I think he has a new book coming out soon. He'll tell us all about what he's got in the works.
Don't worry. He's going to have lots of plugs.
And, but yeah, speaking of plugs, once again, send us emails, horrorfortheholidays@gmail.com. We'll read them out in our Garbage Day segment. If you want to get in touch with us on social media, we are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on Threads. We're still not on Blue Sky yet, but when we are, we will be at horror, the number 4 holidays, HORROR 4 holidays.
We are at youtube.com/horror for the holidays. Leave us a comment. Tell us how fat we are. Tell us how dumb we are.
Rate, review, thumbs up, subscribe, hit the little bell, all that good shit.
All the things. Do the rating things on the podcatchers.
Yeah, leave comments. Certainly, get on those podcatchers. 5-star reviews.
5-star. Jeff and Jay terrible.
Man,
Jeff and Jay don't know anything. How have they been doing this a year?
What the fuck is wrong with Jay? What did he drink to make him burp into the microphone a couple times in this episode? Which I'm very sorry that happened. 5 stars. This podcast fucking sucks. Edit better.
Anything
like that. We only read the 5-star reviews. We only read the good stuff. So if you got something critical to say, certainly give us a 5-star review and tell us how bad we are.
5 stars. I hope Mike comes to the studio and kills Jeff and Jay.
I hope another person we've talked about having on is Matthew Dupuy, the creator of Scary Little Christmas, the big book about hopefully he comes on and does a better job and puts these bozos out of business, takes over the podcast. 5 stars. Man.
Oh, geez, Rick.
But in the meantime, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting us for a full year and bearing with us as we kind of learn about podcasting and stuff
Please,
like that.
for the love of God, email us some emails or some questions for Mike or something. I have a very bad feeling that I'm going to have to try more alcohol if you don't. It's been a while now.
Oh, it's coming. Don't worry about that. What was the... Oh, I had something else I was going to say, and now I forgot it. Oh, well.
Derailed yet again.
But also, have a nice Christmas in July.
Yep.
We'll talk to you again in 2 weeks, and hopefully we'll have Mike Lombardo with us. Thanks for listening.
1 year anniversary to the show.
Yep. See you again. Bye.
Goodbye.